mice in his closet.
In. All right. Heat on it's hot in here. So I wanted to call to order the special meeting for the Diversity Council, Monday, November 23rd, 2020. And can I ask someone to give the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I will.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mary. All right. And I'll take attendance. We have Natasha, Mary, Charlie, Sarah, and Robert. Okay, great, thank you. So we will go ahead and get to the meeting. I have emailed you, and I just did it. The meeting from the minutes from the last meeting, I should have sent those to you prior. I'm gonna look to you, Jason. Do we read those and then approve them, or do they just get approved by us sending them out?
So members should have read the meeting minutes ahead of time. They don't get read into the record. There's just a motion to accept them or correct them as the case may be.
Okay, so that was my fault. I didn't get them out soon enough, so we will go ahead and move that towards the next meeting. And then we will just double approve some minutes. All right, and I don't see that we have anyone. We have, do we have anyone from the public? I do not see that. Okay, great. So we will just move on in. Communications. I don't have any communications. Does anyone have anything?
Nothing.
What would be, Anna, what would be considered communications?
We can talk about that. So we'll talk about, you know, what we can do as far as that, and as far when we get into roles and minute takers, because this is kind of new to us, so we're trying to figure everything out.
Okay.
All right. I wanted to, before we moved on, just formally introduce Natasha Holmes. She is our newest member. She was approved last Thursday at the board meeting. Natasha, would you like to say something about yourself and why you joined the council?
Hello, everybody. I'm Natasha Holmes. I am looking forward to working with all of you. I joined the committee. I have a passion for service organizations. I'm a part of one, actually, president of my local chapter that's based out of Hartford, and I'm just looking to helping increase diversity and inclusion in East Windsor.
Thank you.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
All right.
Great,
And the
welcome
one
aboard.
item that, I'm sorry?
No, I said welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right, so I guess this might be a quick meeting, but the one item that we have for unfinished business is the hot topic discussion of Plantation Road.
It's so hot, no one wants to talk about it.
I was gonna say, don't everybody jump in at once.
Okay,
Do you want me to start, Anna? I could probably give some context as the requester.
absolutely, give us some of your thoughts there.
So about 3 months ago, I reached out to the first selectman, and I inquired about a request to rename Plantation Road. The reason why I did it was not to like take any context out of, you know, the history that was preserved here in East Windsor with the farming industry. We actually spoke to a few of our neighbors on the street and came up with the potential alternative name of Broadleaf. I'm trying to continue to carry on the agricultural history that we have here with the tobacco industry. And so one of the things that have been weighing on my head since moving here was just making sure that my family felt included. And probably 3 months ago, when there was really a lot of incitement for social injustice in our Black community, I have my children coming home asking questions. They're learning about things in their history books. And I just wanted to make sure that as we continue to build our life here in East Windsor, that I can make sure that they feel comfortable and are okay with being able to say, hey, I live here on this particular road or what have you. I know that it means certain things to different people. For us, it definitely means something and brings us back to a time where we were not treated the most fairly. And I understand that Webster's dictionary says that is just referring to a large farm. But when we start to think about, we have about a couple families on this street that are Black, and I've had conversations with them. And there is a little bit of uneasiness that we have from time to time, being able to invite our families over and write down the street name. A lot of times I call out for service and I get questioned like, did you say that name right? So I just thought that to kind of build some of that uneasiness about where we're looking to lay our head for the next few years, and just trying to see if there was any consideration for how we feel within our neighbors. Our neighbors are great. We have a really good community here. But I just wanted, since this diversity inclusion committee has come up, maybe have us think about how we can maybe ensure, right, that our families feel welcome here and things of that nature. So that's just to give a little bit of background.
Thank you. So at this time, I'll go ahead and say some things. I'll get us started. Thank you, Natasha. That article that came out had a lot of comments on it. And with that, I was not surprised, but I was still a little bit disappointed because a lot of what I read was there's an inability to look at things through a different lens, to kind of step outside of this is how it's always been. And the whole context that I picked up from the comments was not what we're trying to do with East Windsor. What I felt was, this is the way we've done it. This is how we've always done it. And if you don't like it, get out. And so to me, I was like, I took that personally because as a minority myself, I was like, well, you kind of hear it in the background, but to see it, it's a little different. It stings a little differently. And so with that, I wanted to just go ahead, and I've done some research and some things, and I wanted to just address some of the things that I saw in the comments. First, I wanted to start with our own council. And I think that with some of the messages I received, we need to be very careful of using terms as, like, it doesn't affect that many people, or not enough people, don't like it, and those types of things. In our charge, it says that we are to bring awareness to racial sensitivities. And this is one area that it is sensitive to races, to the minority races. So where we say, not a lot of people are affected, the minority population here is small. And so I would say enough people are offended by it. There was a lot of, well, this is what it means. It's a large farm. If you go on the internet, you'll find whatever you want to find. And so when I went onto the internet myself and I went to dictionary.com, it says a large farm or estate in a tropical or semi-tropical zone for the cultivation, and it speaks to what it's cultivating. And it says it's cultivated typically by enslaved, unpaid, or low-wage resident laborers. So there's that. I looked at National Geographic, and I looked at what they consider a plantation system. And in that, it speaks to what it is. And then it says the need for agricultural labor led to the establishment of slavery. And so that we move into there. If you can't tell, I'm really passionate about this one. It does something to me. I also heard that slavery happened in the South and that there were no families in East Windsor, that didn't happen here. Well, we have the Allens, the Bissells, the Blisses, the Diggins, the Mathers, the Burstills, and the Watsons that each lived in East Windsor and held slaves. We have information about slavery. There was an ad where a master said his slave ran away, and it went on to describe the slave, and they said that he was made well. His stature, and that's like made well. A pair of shoes is made well. A purse is made well. I don't know that we can say a person is made well, but that speaks to they were not, we all know they were not treated as people, but to see something saying something was made well as a human, that bothers me too. So we have that. East Windsor is a little bit of a, it's special. I'll say that. There was also an article in the Journal by Chris Powell. This is on July 1st, 2020. And he goes on to describe the tone of the article is, for us to forget what happened to them when they were here, let's focus on how they got here. And in it, he states, today's protesters seem to want to think that slavery has been airbrushed out of this country's history and that their protests are sharing a revelation. But their revelation is only a matter of their own ignorance. And it goes on to say that. So that was in the Journal, and that was another article that I was like, well, that is not welcoming or inclusive. And so with that, I've reached out to a couple of sources. I have this over at the governor's office and having looked at this at a statewide level, because there are only those 3 towns in here that have that. And so with that, I felt that, yes, it's a low number of towns. We have 169, but again, the racist connotation, the fact that when you say slavery or when you say plantation, you don't automatically think of a large farm. Plantation is associated with slavery. And so you can't dismiss that. You can't say, oh, it tells me that it's slavery, but let me see what Webster says about it, because that's just not how we work. And so with that, I feel that this is something that we should look at as a group. We should accept it, and we should come up with a proposal to move it to the Board of Selectmen for their consideration. And that's my 2 cents.
That was a lot of 2 cents, Anna. So if you guys don't know me by now, I'm very light-hearted. You know, I don't want this to become a heated thing. I know that there are people who feel strongly passionate. I need you guys to really understand that it's coming from a good nature. Most of it is, we do have those memories, right? We have those historical things. They formed our times. They formed who we are as individuals now. We're looking to have a more unified community. And I prefer to kind of leave those kind of contexts, if you will, in our history books and allow our generations that are coming here now and memorializing a place and home here in this community to just feel a little bit more included and not have to see memorialize or words or connotations that continue to make them feel inferior, if you will. And so I'm here not to rock the boat. I'm here to say, what is something that we can compromise on. And again, like I said, looking at the industry that East Windsor has in the tobacco fields. I ride by the trucks all the time. I drive like 5 miles right behind them. So I just want to continue to keep some history here, right, of East Windsor, but be mindful that we have two families that live on this road, and we have to deal with that, you know, personally. But I really would like to hear and definitely hear from our neighbors, and hope that our neighbors can kind of have that sensitivity to us being here as well.
So I'll pipe in. I mean, I understand what you're all saying, and that the term is offensive to you in some manner. But I don't know. I'm kind of stuck on the fact that the term itself, plantation, is still in common use even in the South. You can go on tours of many of the plantations down there to learn the history of what had developed there, and even a lot of it has got to do with slavery. So a lot of it's a learning process of what occurred in the South back during the days of when slavery was common. But I think, to me anyway, here in East Windsor, the term plantation really was what it is, what the definition in Webster is anyway. It's simply a plantation. So I understand that the context where some people might find it offensive, but it's still a common term, and it's still in use today. And I'm just Googling, and so I just Googled plantations in the South, and there's 10 notable Southern plantation tours. These are just the 10 notable ones, in which they offer tours of these plantations. And it's, like I said, it's still a common term. I think if you were to attach the word plantation to maybe a family here in town years ago that had slaves, and called it, let's say it was XYZ family that had slaves on their plantation, and this was XYZ Plantation Road, I can understand that perfectly well as to why that would be offensive, because it does bring you right to that point. But just the term in and of itself, I think we're just wiping away the history of our town, which is tobacco. This is tobacco country. It's the Tobacco Valley, and I don't know. That's just where I'm at.
I am going to add a little bit to that. Right now, America is reckoning. We're reckoning, and we are kind of coming to grips and saying, yes, this happened. And there are a lot of plantations down south, and there are plantation tours, and those are used appropriately as historically significant things. And that's why you'll see those tours and such. Down south, Texas, South Carolina, and Missouri have all moved to rename towns. And they have approved removing the name plantation from a lot of their towns and their roads. So that's what's going on in the rest of the country right now. And we need to get on the right side of history, and we need to say Connecticut is different. We're different in that we're going to join together.
But do we erase the history? That this is kind of where I'm at. Do we go to Mount Rushmore and take Jefferson off of Mount Rushmore? Do we go to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and remove every single monument in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania? Do we do that?
No, and to your to that, and not to, there's no comparison, and to atrocities are atrocities, and they have their own pain and their own significance. But right now, Auschwitz is a museum. You can tour Auschwitz, but we wouldn't name a street Auschwitz Avenue. We need to have that same respect for our Black community and say, you know, in a labor camp, how does Webster describe a labor camp? They say that it is a labor camp.
So can I ask a question? Can I intervene real quick, Madam Chair? I would like to ask Mr. Leach, why do you feel like we're erasing what is here in East Windsor by renaming the street?
Because the name of that road came from the plantation that it was on.
Okay. And do you feel like we're in a steady state of growing, I guess, and becoming more, or we're transforming as our generations grow? Do you feel like there should be some families and some states and maybe compromising on the name? Because I don't really feel like we're erasing it. Like you said, the plantation road we don't really have record of it, whether it was named after a family here who may have had one. We don't know that, I don't believe yet, Anna. But here's the thing, there aren't any more. On our street, there are some farms here, but those aren't the ones that I see constantly as I walk up and down the street getting seeded and getting and all the crops coming in. I don't see those being managed as well. So if you think about a large farm, you want to think of something that is currently still being managed, I guess, if you will, if you want to continue to maintain the history. But I do think that there is merit in trying to understand that the families here that have made a life here, we're paying taxes, we are building on the properties that we own here, that there will be at least some sensitivity to possibly compromising on the name.
There. Since our meeting and when this subject came up, I've looked at a few things as well. I looked at the first census of the United States in 1790, where there were 80 Windsor families that held enslaved people. I also looked at Rhode Island's recent history with the term plantation. And although its original meaning may not have implied that there were enslaved people held on those plantations, there probably were in many of the early plantations enslaved Native Americans, enslaved West Indians, and enslaved African Africans. Even though the meaning of the word does not, the original meaning of plantation had nothing necessarily to do with slaveholding. Modern implication, its modern connotation, is that of a property where enslaved people worked the land, or poor people who were essentially in a condition of servitude, even if they were sharecroppers. But that connotation of plantation is our modern connotation. When you hear the word plantation today, you don't think of just a large farm with a cash crop. If you hear the word plantation today, your immediate thought goes to Southern plantation with the enslaved people working the land.
That's your view, Rick.
And that's the common perception of the word plantation today. I think it's quite reasonable to request to the Board of Selectmen that the name be changed to something other than Plantation Road. I think it's a reflection of what a modern community should do to reach out toward all its citizens and to let them know that diversity and inclusion is part of who we are as a community. So, there were 8 people on that 1790 census, 8 families that did hold people in slavery.
I don't
Not
doubt
something
that.
that's somebody else's issue, it's ours.
So I'm still Googling and looking at the Magnolia Gardens, Magnolia Plantation, South Carolina, which is on Magnolia Plantation Road.
Right now, on Plantation Road, we have the Markowski Farm, and they're an active farm. Perhaps we can look at, in order to preserve history, we can rename it the Markowski Farm Road. I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any objections to that either. I think there's a couple of residents that I spoke to on the street who had other names as well. So I'm definitely not closed-minded. Like I said, I talked to a couple of residents already and we kind of brainstormed on that, thinking of the tobacco industry. But again, I am not opposed, to any other recommendations. And again, this is just me as one of the constituents that live on the street, but definitely look forward to my neighbors as well, continue the discussions with them to see if there's any thought there.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Rick. Does anyone else have anything to add?
No, the only thing that I keep going back to is the underlying costs.
There's that too.
I
And who
don't think that's a concern. I think that's a concern for the Board of Selectmen to deal with. Concern should be whether or not it's in the equity interest of the community to address the issue. Then it's up to the Board of Selectmen to deal with the cost, that sort of thing.
I'll disagree with you 100% on this, Rick. And the reason being, should we ignore that? And this is why. Think about the 2018 Green Energy Bill. It was recently passed 2 years ago, right? That 2018 Green Energy Bill passed by the majority in Hartford is responsible for your delivery rates of your electricity today.
Let's not
So
go
that's
there.
just
Come on.
passing the buck along.
We don't need to get into a philosophical debate on government
I think we
actions
should,
that somebody
because
else
it's
took.
definitely part of it. We're doing it at a ground level right here, Rick.
I'd like to step in and just bring this back to the issue at hand, which is the Plantation Road. We can certainly go on and on and on about the green project. But right now we need to just stay with this topic so that we can move it along. It is something that's unfinished business and we want to kind of put an end to it, put it to bed.
Can I ask a question? Is it our job to, as a committee, to we're advisory to the Board of Selectmen is what I understand, right? So is it our job to figure out the how, what, when, why, or are we just taking in information as a committee to say, hey, does this meet a criteria or guideline where we can build additional inclusiveness for our residents here that might be diverse? I'm just trying to understand what our action items will be, like what is the responsibility of the committee.
Well, we've got members of the Board of Selectmen right here that gave this committee the charge. I think they could probably chime in and give us an idea. Or not.
All right. When I was going back and forth regarding the Diversity Council and what it should look like, what I saw is a group of compassionate advocates is what we need to be. We need to be representatives for the underrepresented. And in that, I feel that we need to look at these items that are presented to us. And I think that we need to do the research behind the scenes. And I think we need to say, we need to be supportive of the people that bring them forward to us. We need to be sensitive And where it's something like what we have here, I think our role is, do we move this forward to the Board of Selectmen? We will not make the choice, and we will not vote on whether it gets done, but we can certainly vote and say, we as a team are behind this. We'll move it to the Board of Selectmen, and however it's handled there, we will accept. But we need to come up with more guidelines as we move forward in how we're going to do that. But ultimately, I think that's what it is. I think we're just the council that is going to do the legwork and then send it over to the board. Does anyone think that we should be something different? Is your understanding different?
That sounds exactly what I had in mind when I first joined here.
There, I would agree, but I think there's a responsibility for the council to also put forward a solid idea that is fiscally responsible and not outrageous, and to some extent, not saying that this is at all, just saying that we have a responsibility to put forward good work, basically.
I think we can put forward the cost, and I think we can move that forward to the council, to the Board of Selectmen for their consideration. But I don't know that we as a committee should put a dollar sign or a threshold on what we think is the right thing. Ultimately, it's going to be at the town meeting level where it's going to be approved or not. But I think that our job is to send it up there with as much information and as much support as we can get.
Well, I disagree. I think a lot of the information about cost is relevant, and it certainly is for me, because ultimately that will affect my pocketbook. And that is a big, I can be compassionate for a lot of things, but I also have a financial situation that I have to manage. So I think the costs are a viable issue. And if I were to push on that, it doesn't mean that I'm any less compassionate about the issue, but that particular feature of this project affects me.
So
Then we,
can I ask a question? So I kind of heard what you said, Madam Chair, earlier about gathering the information and bringing it up. There's another level that's going to ultimately decide, right? And I think I'm a little leery. I want to be cautious with this committee, because when we start to talk about compassion and, and then maybe not carrying things forward, if we're an advisory committee, we don't have to take on that onus to say whether we agree or disagree. We really have to kind of remove all of biases, put all the facts together, and then, like I said, either agree to move it up, it sounds like, to the Board of Selectmen to continue to carry it forth for a vote. I just want to be cautious as we extend this conversation to the public, that we ensure that our residents feel comfortable with bringing their concerns here and not feeling like it's always going to come down to whether what's important to me comes down to a dollar amount. So I want to just be cautious about that. I do know that there's an expense there, but I want to hope that as a small town like East Windsor, we can take the leadership and example of giants like Rhode Island. Could you imagine the amount of change and cost that has to go into changing all of their entire state records and things of that nature? But they did it for inclusiveness for the families that live in that state. And so I just want to just wanted to say that.
Not suggesting that cost is not a consideration. I'm only suggesting that the consideration of cost is for the Board of Selectmen and the town meeting maybe to deal with. Our issue should be, in my opinion, should be the equity of the situation and whether or not it enhances us as a community that encourages diversity and inclusion. Now, the Board of Selectmen certainly would have to put costs with it. to present it to a town meeting. They could and they should do that, and they have the staff and the ability to do that. That's not an issue really for us. That's really, in my opinion, an issue for the Board of Selectmen and the town meeting, the final arbiters of the question would be the town meeting.
I agree.
I also agree. That's definitely the purview of the town council level. Like, we're here to come up with the ideas, not push it through, because we don't have that authority.
Right. Well, I think it'd be important to make sure we have a set of criteria to kind of determine, so we can look at it more black and white, and it doesn't become this whole nebulous, well, this is offensive to me and it's not offensive to you, or vice versa. I think it would be more practical for us as a group to have, a set of guidelines that say, does it hit A, B, and C? And if it does, then we present it to the Board of Selectmen. If not, it doesn't meet the criteria, it's a non-issue. So, and otherwise, I'm not sure how we can do this fairly across the board.
I agree with you, Johnny. I think we kind of need a scope that we need to hold ideas to.
That's kind of difficult because we really haven't developed what we as a council are going to do. I'm looking forward to a time when we participate with the Board of Selectmen, with the Police Commission, Police Department, Board of Education on this upcoming question of inherent bias. I'm looking forward to maybe applying for a grant through the Greater Hartford Foundation to allow us to do some work in the community, to bring in some experts, bring in some people who facilitate dialogue within the community on issues of inclusion and equity and where we're at as a community and how we can improve our situation. Each of these issues, when they come up, they're not going to have clear guidelines because there aren't any clear guidelines. There aren't any tables that say if A, then B when it comes to these issues. These are issues of the soul and of the heart and of the mind. And they have to be judged that way. They have to be judged based on historical precedent. They have to be judged based on where we believe we should be as a community, where we believe we are as a community. And that's how you judge them. There aren't any yardsticks that say, if A, then B. If people are offended who live on Plantation Road by the name of the road, then the answer is why. It's not that simple. It's more complex. It's more nuanced. And I don't think we're ever going to find a clear standard of this, this, and this. These are things that we're going to have to talk out in sometimes difficult discussions. We need to have them, as every community in this country needs to have. And we're not special in that regard. We're like everybody else, I think. If it were up to me now, I'd offer a resolution to send the issue to the Board of Selectmen with a recommendation that the name be changed.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Rick. I think we have to be very careful with guidelines because they could then become very discriminatory as well. And I do think that this committee and everyone who signed up for it, you guys have to have big hearts because you've joined the most difficult committee of a lifetime because we're dealing with people issues. We're dealing with matters of the heart. We're dealing with social inclusion. We're dealing with trying to make everyone feel like they're equal, even though the world is saying otherwise. And so there are going to be, these are going to be tough challenges and conversations. And like I said, I'm really open to hearing what others may think. But these are not going to be cut and dry. And I think that there's a lot of people who want to kind of sweep things under the rug and say, hey, it's cut and dry. But unfortunately, I don't think it will be. And for many other situations, that's going to come to this committee.
I agree that there is no black and white cut and dry scope that we can ever put any of this under. But some of the things that'll probably come up, I'm just reading some of the other comments, which somebody had mentioned changing the name of the town from Broadbrook to something else because the word broad is derogatory towards women. So it's.
Yeah, and I read that too.
Where do we draw the line? You know, it's.
I read that comment, and honestly, I think that the young lady, I'm going to say young lady or woman.
I think they were joking with it.
I understand that, but I mean, that's feminism. Like, to me, I would never call myself that. So here's the other thing. So we're drawing jokes and those kind of things. To me, that was insensitive because, again, this is going to be a committee who's going to have to take care and be careful about which direction we choose to move in, or whether we recommend to the board or not. Because I think that it's easy for a lot of people to say, this doesn't matter to me. I don't care. It doesn't affect me. I don't see it that way. But there's other weights on other people. And that's what our job is as a committee, is to understand how to bring that inclusiveness and how to bring that awareness across everyone in East Windsor to say, we need that sensitivity training. Clearly from all of those comments, we need sensitivity training in this town, definitely.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So right now, can we say that by show of hands, can we say that our next step is, do we agree to send this up to the board? Do we agree to put something together and say, hey, this is worth considering. This is something that we feel will be a stepping stone in our quest to bring inclusivity to East Windsor? Can we say, we hear you, and this is what we're doing about it?
Oh,
So I'm gonna say yes.
I have a question about the process if we send it to the board, to the board, what happens next?
Jason, as far as what do we do next?
No, what the board does with it. If we advance this to the Board of Selectmen, what's the process it's going to go through to either be approved or not?
Well, the 30,000 foot answer to that question is that for this to happen, at the very least, the Board of Selectmen would have to agree to send the question to a town meeting, and then the town meeting would have to approve any change. There are lots of different variations on how that could go. Certainly we're not doing any town meetings of the normal sorts for the foreseeable future. So I don't mean to, if this comes across as insensitive, I don't mean it to be, but there isn't an urgency as to the fierce moment of now, because there's not much we can actually do on it for a while, or at least much that we actually would do on it. Until the town meeting can meet again, which is sometime in 2021, probably, there wouldn't be much action beyond that. Under the statute, there are provisions that allow for questions that are brought before the town meeting to be petitioned to a referendum. So it could be a lot more complicated and costly than just a conventional town meeting, which is any voters who are interested in the question come to a prescribed place and time. So that, you know, that's the 30,000 foot. I could go into 6 or 8 different scenarios, but
That's plenty. Thank you.
Does anyone have anything else to add?
Why don't we put it in the form of a motion?
There you go.
We could vote on it. So I'll move that the council recommends to the Board of Selectmen name of Plantation Road be
I second that.
so it's moved and seconded.
Do we recommend that it's changed or do we recommend that there's a review? Do you know what I mean?
Well, that resolution recommends that it be changed, or that motion rather. What it's changed to is someone else's responsibility. The motion is simply to change the name.
I second, if it hasn't already been seconded.
Is it? All right, Jason, what do we do now?
You have to restate the motion in second.
Oh,
so
we only need,
you restate the motion in second, you ask for any discussion from members of the council, and when there's no further discussion from members of the council, you call a vote.
oh, perfect. All right, the resolution that we're looking at is to rename Plantation Road. We're looking to move that to the board. It has been moved and it has been seconded. Does anyone have any other questions or comments they'd like to make before we vote? All right, let's,
I'm sorry. So if this goes to the board and ultimately there's a townwide referendum or some other way of determining how the town feels, does that make sense considering we're talking about sensitivity to a minority, and there's no way a minority is going to win a referendum if that's, you know, an us versus them kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
There's no reason, if I might, there's no reason it should be an us versus them. This is about us as a community. It's not about, it's about sensitivity to members of our community, not necessarily any individuals. It's not about the 2 people who live on the street. It's about the community as a whole and whether we're sensitive to the issue that's been raised. That's what it's about.
And it's also about how we represent our town to the rest of the world, because we're
That's right.
one of very few towns in the entire country that actually even have a road named this. And the connotation is there of what that word means. And it's going to mean different things to different people, but there's a reason that that name has been changed through countless towns to something that is also historically accurate towards the history and representative of the history, but yet does not glorify the enslavement and indentured servants of minorities.
I'm concerned if we pass the motion as it is with it open-ended without a chosen replacement name, that will open all kinds of floodgates of people that are serious or not serious, who are compassionate or not compassionate. And I think we need to be a little bit more brave and decide, well, what do we want to change it? Because it's the, as we're sitting here, we want it changed, but we're not going to say what we want it changed to. Why not say we'd like to change it to XYZ or agree to that, because then it will be more definitive and not so wishy-washy and open to all kinds of rebuttal.
I
agree with
that.
You hit the nail on the head. This is where I was gonna, my little turn to talk anyway. And Anyway, I was going to tell you all I'm going to vote no again on this simply because we're not doing the good work.
Right.
Good work would be us as a council, not only voting to change the name, but coming up with a plan as to what that name would be, polling
Right.
people in the area what they would like it to be named to, doing a complete job of what we should be doing. Just
Right.
putting out an open-ended motion without, we're just going to go ahead and change the name. Well, it's kind of a useless motion in my mind. I think we're wasting our time with that.
It's incomplete.
Do the
Yes,
job
I
and
agree,
do it
Robert.
right.
Can
I'm
I
sorry?
offer a recommendation? So,
I like
not to
broadleaf.
say, huh?
I said I like broadleaf.
I like broadleaf too. See, and a couple of our neighbors did too. So that would be me. But here's my question. And this is maybe my ignorance and not knowing how affairs occur and are handled here in East Windsor. Because like I may have reached out to about 4 families on this road already. There's probably about 6 or 7 more, and then the 2 farms or businesses. There's a business, and I think there's a farm that's way up at the top. Would we as a council or myself need to reach out to everyone and try to see what they have an opinion, or how do the residents who really matter, who are going to be directly impacted, give feedback? Like, I don't want to say that I'm the liaison for the entire street, but like, how does that happen?
That's why I'd leave it to the Board of Selectmen to do some further diligence. If they decide to proceed with changing the name, their prerogative, then it would be up to them to do some consultation with the neighbors, search the town records to make sure that you're not duplicating a street name. All those kinds of things would have to be done before the Board of Selectmen presented to a town meeting. And I'd suggest that if we wanted to attach a recommended name to the street change, that it be just that, a recommendation, without any, and be so labeled as a recommendation and not a firm, fast.
Are you saying to send it up without a name or with a name?
Well, personally, I'd send it without, because I think the Board of Selectmen is perfectly capable of handling that. And they would have the resources to deal with it and to discuss it with the neighbors on the street. So I would leave it blank and let them do whatever they would do with it. Somebody wants to attach a name, I don't have a big.
Yeah.
I think the Board of Selectmen is better off to handle that.
My thought would be to make that decision here. And the reason for that is because this is such a sensitive topic that we want them to vote yes or no to move it forward. That's what we want. We don't want there to be, like Mary said, those open-ended questions where the goal kind of gets lost. We need to just present it as one thing and say, this is what we have in this, and we've already gone through the minutia. We've looked at all the little things. We've decided that we are presenting a full resolution so that they can't come back and say, well, now we need to vote on a name. Now we need to do this. I think that we need to come up with that. We need to send that forward. So I agree with Mary on that.
I agree with you 100% there. What if the Board of Selectmen does their due diligence and they decide to name it Second Street, and
There's a Second Street already.
all the residents would be like, that's not the name we want.
Yeah. No, and it
Why
does.
don't we do good work and do our job that we should be doing? At least come up with a recommendation and don't make more work for another board to try to accomplish on our behalf.
Right.
I would like
So-
to recommend, I would like to send it up with the recommendation of broadleaf, only because I have discussed it with a couple of other neighbors on the street. And again, I think it's a fair enough compromise with making sure that we continue to uh, to recognize the tobacco industry that is here.
As the maker of the motion, I'll accept that as an amendment if the seconder will agree.
I second that.
No, whoever seconded it has to agree to
Oh,
make
I'm
it as a
sorry.
friendly amendment.
I think
I
I
think,
think we still have
Anna-
some
Anna-
discussion here going.
all right.
so that's now part of the motion if the seconder agrees. Seconder, I think was you, Anna.
I do, and I just want to say, Natasha, that's a great idea. That's a great name. But I'm going to kind of look at what Bob said as far as erasing history. And because East Windsor is holding so tight to that, that we need to be able to say, we're not erasing history because we're gonna name it the Markowski Farm Road because that's the farm that's on there and it's been there historically. And so I feel that there would be less pushback instead of, naming it something generic. That is broadleaf road could be, could be applied to lots of other things. But if we just say there's a Markowski Farm Road on there, they've been here forever, we're not erasing history, we're saying yes, and we are honoring them in their farm. So that's my idea.
Okay, I've got something I've got to say. This is our second meeting, and we have a newcomer, which we're very glad to have on board. In my opinion, we are going to look really foolish if we just start throwing out resolutions for some other committee to take charge of. I think that whole street needs to be canvassed if that is appropriate, and by whom, I don't know if it's one of us, but I think we need to have more input, inclusiveness of the people on that street, because they are going to be the ones directly affected. And it doesn't matter what ethnicity it is. I think the inclusiveness starts there by taking all the residents and getting their feedback. Otherwise, it just looks like somebody wrote a letter and we said, okay, fine, let the first selectman committee handle it. So I think to take us seriously, we need to do a lot more work. And at least if this is going, this can stay in discussion, but I don't see where it's anywhere near ready to send to the board.
So Mary, I can offer this. I can draft something to my other neighbors and explain to them, like I have done with the family so far, and explain to them that this is something that is brought to the newly formed diversity committee. And we wanted to just get their feedback, and I could create a small survey and I could send it to the committee, and then we can kind of approve of the survey that we want to send to the other residents, and then maybe table the vote for our next meeting or once those come back.
Well, anything, and Jason would have to advise us as to how that works, but
Because of COVID.
well, everything. Postage, mailing, does it get mailed? It can't be a flyer, I understand. I had brought that up last week, but as we go along, I think this is a viable issue. I really feel like we need to treat it more like a fragile issue, and that we are looking at everything. So when it is presented, people are not pointing fingers at us as a bunch of loonies, that we didn't do the job, that we got the signatures, or we got the information, or we got the feedback, and we did show compassion to everyone. But I think we got more meetings to go before we can send a resolution to anybody.
Hey, I don't know if we lost Jason. I know that certain towns do online petitions. I'm not sure if that's viable.
Don't know. I asked last week about announcing this committee, and I haven't seen anything come on these. Has it been announced on the East Windsor website? Anna?
There's an article. I don't know if you heard about it.
An article in the, you said there was an article in the paper.
There was an article on East Windsor website. It kind of, we came out with a bang.
And
We've been introduced. The town does know about us. We were supposed to have the reporter on this meeting. I will send him the recording, but he was going to sit in on this meeting to do a more in-depth article on what it is that we do. The last story came out way out of the bulk. Nobody knew that was coming out.
well, I would suggest that until we invite the media, outside media in on meetings, we need to kind of get our bearings and how we want to be portrayed and written about. You know, just we need to practice our good meeting status. And, you know, I wouldn't want to say anything that would be taken
Out of context.
used again. Yeah, and I want us to look viable and like we're trying to do something really, really good, not just trying to fill the hole.
No, let's go back to Plantation Road for a minute. And I'm understanding that you want to do a little more legwork. I think that that is a fantastic idea. What do you guys think about tabling this just until the next meeting so that we've all had a great conversation. There's a lot of opinions that have been shared. We all know what each other is thinking. I think that it does make sense for us to go back and kind of firm up our position so that we have a good solid resolution that we can send forward.
I agree.
I'll withdraw the motion.
Right, I was about to say you have to let the motion on the floor die in order to bring forth
All
another.
right, table it or withdraw it. I'll withdraw it.
Okay.
The
So we
seconder
will
has
move-
to agree.
I agree.
And all of our meetings are publicly noticed, and the press is also made aware and are invited to attend any of our meetings, just so everybody's aware of it.
All right, so we will go ahead and we will table this to the next meeting. Do we have, Natasha,
Yes,
do we have tasks that you would like us to kind of hit before we come back?
well, I think we definitely need some guidance. Like I said, I'm not sure what the official mannerism is to get in touch with the other neighbors and what's legally correct. I've just gone to the ones that I know. And so friendly conversations. But if there's a more official mannerism that I need to take to maybe get some more of that feedback that we want, I'm gonna need the Board of Selectmen to provide me with some guidance.
If Jason is still on, he can
He stepped away.
facilitate that.
He
Yeah, I
stepped
would
away.
imagine, I'm sorry, I would imagine we should be able to at least poll the people that live on Plantation Road and just send them a written letter asking whether or not they would like to rename it and if they have any ideas as to what they would like to rename it to, and offer the suggestions that we've had, which was broadleaf, and just ask, even if just that much anyway would give us a lot of information.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Anna, it might need to come from, I don't know if we have letterhead yet, but it might be worth coming from this committee on like letterhead.
Yeah,
Okay,
agree
I
with that.
will, my task will be to kind of meet up with Jason, get some more details around how we're gonna do that, and then I will get that together and send it out in an email. Is that okay?
Yeah, that works.
All right, so we are tabling until next meeting, which is December at some point. I don't have it here.
28.
28, thank you. All right, so we will go ahead and do that. I'll send that out. Natasha will get that. And in the meantime, we all have a month to kind of think about this a little bit more. So now that that took an hour and 6 minutes, we're gonna fly through the rest. All right. This is,
Can I just say that I enjoy, like, I'm loving the conversation, the feedback, I just, just wanted to say that.
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you're on board.
I'm with you too.
this was
I
so
should,
good.
I should be at another meeting right now, but I'm staying here, so.
We're the fun ones, okay? All right, so we're gonna move to new business. We need to establish roles, rules, and elect someone to take the minutes.
I move that we nominate Natasha to be the minutes keeper.
Natasha looks so excited.
Usually you ask somebody first.
Actually, usually
Okay,
it goes
I'm
to the
gonna
person
ask
who's not
them.
at the meeting.
Say it again?
Usually it goes to the person who misses the meeting. So if Bob had been him.
Oh, no. Doesn't work that way.
First, let me see. Does anyone volunteer to take the minutes for this meeting?
For this meeting? After we have.
For all
There's
of
a
our
video.
meetings.
You can watch the video.
Oh, Lord, I got so much to do. Yeah, if there aren't any other like enthusiastic people who really want to take minutes, I could do it.
Is anyone else enthusiastic? All right.
Wait, when a minute's got to go out?
Before the next meeting.
Okay. Like, is there no, like, seriously, so is there like a time frame, like 5 days after the meeting where they should be out? I know that the committee needs enough time to read them before coming into the meeting. Like, is there a time frame?
Yeah, that is correct.
So is it
What's
like
the
7 days before the meeting that they
I
need to
think we
get
can
these?
pick it. I think
Okay.
we can pick the time, or you can, since,
No, it's a freedom of information thing. It needs to, public agency meetings need to be posted within a time certain. I want to say it's 5 days, but I can check on that.
oh, okay.
I believe you're correct, Jason. It's 5 days.
Is there letterhead or something that I need to use and get access to? No, okay.
No, generally
you
just
say the
record
last
minutes, which would be any of the motions that are made. You can include some discussion, you don't have to. But anything that occurs by the council where any decisions are made and voted on, all has to be recorded. Attendance has to be recorded. And typically you would take those and submit those minutes to the chairperson of the council for their approval. And then once they're approved, you send them off.
Okay.
All right. And thank you. Thank you, Natasha. And so the next item we have is discuss a change in the meeting schedule. Is Charlie Nordell still watching us? He is not there.
Kinda.
Charlie,
I'm in two
Huh?
meetings at once. I'm in two meetings at once.
okay, such a multitasker. I know that you and I spoke about you possibly being our liaison to the Board of Selectmen. Has there been a decision on that?
We haven't discussed it.
Okay, and then with that, there was some discussion about the frequency and time of our meetings. Are we gonna wait for, we'll wait for there to be somebody assigned to us before we decide the meeting, right?
Anna, you need to submit a list of regular meeting minutes to the town clerk's office by the end of January. Typically, that's done in a November meeting, but in the absence of that, if you guys could do that in whenever your December meeting is, that's something that we need to file so you can have regular meeting minutes or regular meetings, which has a different set of rules than special meetings.
Okay, and then it's your board. When will you decide who's gonna be our liaison?
Once I appoint somebody.
Okay, you'll let us know who that is so that we can coordinate our schedules before we put out the meetings? Okay. Thank you.
Maybe,
And
maybe we should
Huh?
do our schedule. And then Jason would find someone who can meet our schedule.
that's a good idea. Why don't you all send me, send me your availability. I think Mondays was good for everybody, right?
Yep.
All right, so we'll do Monday at 6. Let me know if you want Monday at 6 or 7. And
I
the,
can't do 7.
6 o'clock is definitely a lot better.
6 o'clock? Oh, we can even do that now. All right. So do we want to keep this Monday at 6 o'clock, the 4th Monday of the month?
Yes.
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 All right. Do we need to vote on that?
No.
Okay, no changes were made, thank you. And then the next thing on the agenda is the Equality Act resolution that was presented to us by Selectman Sarah Muska. I emailed that to everyone. Have you had a chance to look at it?
Yes.
Did you send that to me, Anna? I may have missed that. I only got the minutes and the agenda.
I didn't, I sent it out last week. I sent it out before you were approved. I'll send it out today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Because it's a little late and we just moved on from Plantation Road, do you all want to table this until the next meeting so that we have more time to discuss it?
Yes.
Johnny,
Yes, yeah.
Jason,
Yep.
Joey?
Yes, I
Yeah.
do.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And then the last one we'll say is a quick one. I met with the Ellington Diversity Council. They are right where we are, establishing their council, figuring out what they're going to get behind and do next. They're carefully watching what we're doing with Plantation Road. And they invited us to collaborate with them and to work together with them to kind of piggyback because we're neighboring towns so that we all have a consistent message there. Is anyone opposed to collaborating with them? They might sit in on a couple of our meetings.
Sounds like a good idea.
Good.
I just would have a question about what we would collaborate on. Like if it's like training or something that we're gonna do within our town, maybe that they can do, maybe that makes sense. I'm just trying to.
Yep, that is still undefined. I know that I spoke to the council in Windsor, and they have just recently passed a they recently passed a resolution where they have declared racism a public health.
Yeah, that's going around. Yep.
And that's something that they wanted to share with us and for our discussion and our review. So it would be things like that. Are we all good with that? Should we vote on that or just say let's go?
I think we could vote on what, them collaborating?
Yeah, do we
I
vote
don't
on
think we need to
collaborate?
vote on it.
All right, we'll just collaborate. That's good. And then from time to time they'll fit in. And that is that. So then we will move to our next meeting date is 12/28. That is at 6 o'clock. Yeah, that's Monday at 6 o'clock. And then can I get a motion to end the meeting?
I move that we adjourn the meeting at 7:15 p.m.
Second.
I second the motion.
All right, thank you all so much. This has been fantastic. I think we got off to a really good start.
Well, thank you for chairing it.
All
Yes.
right.
Thank you.
Nice meeting everybody.
Good
Have a
night.
wonderful
Have a great
holiday.
night.
Thanksgiving. Happy
And through
Thanksgiving.
email.
Yeah.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.